Alright, what's up guys? Today, I'm going to rank every single Call of Duty campaign, starting with the original COD and ending with Modern Warfare 3, the new Modern Warfare 3. But before I get into the ranking, a little lesson for those who aren't as familiar with the series. For those who don't know, Call of Duty is a game about being a soldier in a war, whether it's a real historical war like World War II or Vietnam, or a fake scenario like what if all of South America teamed up to defeat the United States. Call of Duty has left a huge mark in the gaming industry, grossing over $30 billion since its inception. It's also been a cultural phenomenon spanning 3 different decades. Call of Duty's main focus during its early years was its campaigns. However, over time, they were put on the back burners from the more popular modes like multiplayer and zombies. Now that we're all caught up, let me explain what I rank these campaigns based on. First, the atmosphere. This involves the location, the factions, and the stakes at hand, just kind of the overall vibe of any part of the game. So like the music, just how the game feels, you know. After that, I have the story, and I mean, for obvious reasons, it's a story mode, so obviously you should rank the story. But really what I'm looking for is, I really am just looking for how immersive the story is and how much it makes me feel like I'm a part of a team of soldiers. Next, I have gameplay. Some of the older games are obviously going to be a bit challenged on this part, especially, but I'd like to think of myself as a pretty fair individual who understands when something is done in a game with passion or just rushed. After that, I have moments. These are those childhood memory moments that created, the unforgettable experience of COD. Finally, I'm going to be ranking the characters for each campaign, but just know I'm ranking all the characters within the campaign, not just like the top 2 and the antagonist or something. It's every character in the whole campaign. With all that out of the way, let's get into the ranking. Coming in dead last, I have Call of Duty New Modern Warfare 3. This is by far the laziest COD campaign I've ever experienced in my life. The missions in this game are so dull and void of any excitement or just anything at all. It's just gray. Not to mention the repetitiveness of each mission. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. The ones that are actually decent would never crack a top 100 in a ranking of each mission. And since the developers are quote-unquote done with this game, so am I. Not to mention the entire franchise. This campaign was so bad, it completely destroyed my love for this series. No amount of marketing will ever change my mind. If I had to say something good about this game, I would say it's the atmosphere, the look of the missions, like the actual missions, not just the stupid fucking like free roam missions or whatever those are. The look of the actual missions weren't bad, and it was alright. The story didn't make any sense, or it was really boring, and the gameplay, like I said, was so repetitive. It was just more of a speedrun playthrough to get to the actual missions of the game. And at this point, I was so emotionally uninvested in this game, I really couldn't tell you a single moment in the game I thought was memorable. These characters have been so overused, it's infuriating, and really a pathetic attempt at nostalgia baiting at this point. This will forever be, in my opinion, the biggest scam in gaming history. Up next, finishing in 18, probably a little controversial, but honestly a pretty decent campaign. I have the original Call of Duty. Now, don't worry, this isn't a case of bad graphics equals bad game. It's more so that this game is the baseline for all Call of Duties to come, meaning it has the disadvantage of being a really safe game. And by safe, I mean it didn't try anything new or come up with anything too revolutionary. It was a solid starter to what would become one of the biggest games in history. I really love the atmosphere with these old games, especially the music. I love the boat mission. I thought it was a really cool idea. Also, that one mission where you take the dam by yourself. And that's how you do it, New Modern Warfare 3, honestly. Like, that was way better than what they had going on. Also, the one with the house with the cool design on the inside. It was really cool to see these developers try something new and it work out. The story of this game is pretty generic, being the original COD and all. It was, pretty much just your traditional World War II shooter, Band of Brothers type game. But it definitely had some bright spots from time to time. The gameplay also suffers from a similar problem. It's just your traditional shooter. I mean, it's not that anything's wrong with that, it's just that there's better coming down the line. This game really failed in the moments category, but that's more of what I meant with the safeness of the game. It was never going to have any crazy things happen, but it does get a pass due to its circumstances. The characters are also pretty mid. You get your first look at Captain Price, which is cool, and I like the American group too, but it's pretty cut and paste compared to what's to come. Coming in at 17, I have what would probably be most people's dead last pick, Vanguard. I think this is a slightly better version of Modern Warfare 3, the new Modern Warfare 3. I don't hate anything about it necessarily, but there's nothing really to like either. The atmosphere, like most of these lower ranked games, takes the cake here. I like the look of this game a lot, except for the starting mission in the rain. I could barely see it, but for the most part, it was pretty solid. Dare I even say good. The story, however, got worse as the game progressed, especially the Richter guy, who I'll touch on in a minute. This game definitely turned its back completely on what the old CODs were really about, and the story was left to be a very bland, almost cliche pile of mid. The gameplay was also some of the worst I've seen, with that being what made me compare it to Modern Warfare 3, but at least you had characters with you for most missions. This game had almost no moments. Honestly, it's been a while since I played it, and I can hardly remember what happened other than the game was just a bunch of flashbacks and an evil person plot twist or something like that. But by far the worst part of this campaign was the characters. These guys were insufferable from the first mission all the way to the last, especially the main antagonist. This guy was so stupid and probably the least intimidating individual I've ever seen in any media ever. He definitely is a huge factor for this campaign's ranking being so low. Combine that with really boring protagonists, and you've got some of the worst characters this franchise has ever made. After that, at 16, I have Black Ops 3, and I know this is probably another hot take, but hear me out. Black Ops 3 overall might be top 5 COD with zombies and all, but this campaign is horrible. They were trying something new, and I can appreciate that, but this story was so badly written. And before you start saying, oh, you're supposed to read the comics or whatever, I shouldn't have to read another piece of media to understand a video game. And for me, it immediately loses points just based off of that. Not to mention how annoying the interface is, as well as the enemy AI. However, I did like the atmosphere. It was really good for the most part. I like the empty dystopian vibe, as well as the big battle arenas. I think its biggest problem is that it feels so weird that it's like rarely any civilians, and it's almost like the world has already ended and you're just kind of there. The story is not very good, even though I know the twist that you were playing as Taylor the whole time. It just didn't get my attention, and while I like trying something new, maybe don't push this as a canonical sequel to the other two games. The gameplay is okay at times and horrible at others. Honestly, I was playing this campaign, I was so pissed off about the story and the characters that I could not enjoy the gameplay. Not to mention the confusing interface, combined with the really annoying boss fights. This game was doomed to be mid from the start. This game did have some good moments though. The first mission was pretty cool, meeting your superhero squad and losing your arm. Obviously, the times where you go into the other member's mind are always pretty crazy and honestly pretty memorable. But definitely the worst part of this game is its characters. They're all really generic and confusing. Like, I get why Hendrix is an asshole sometimes, but the switch back and forth from like nice to mean, it's like he's on his period or something. It gets pretty tiresome after a while. This game probably requires 2 playthroughs, but the gameplay is reason enough for me to stay away from the campaign. Coming up next, I have a nostalgic favorite for most, World at War. Listen, if you like this campaign, I have no problem with that. It's actually pretty good, and at this point, we're past all the bad campaigns. But if you're going to tell me that you like this one because of the over-the-top violence, you need professional help, man. The atmosphere in this one is really, really good, and I love the music that this game has. I'm a big fan of the American missions in this game and wish they would have gone back to it at some point. The story between both groups that you play as is pretty cool. Obviously, this is the start of what would become Black Ops. But standalone, this game is pretty generic in its story. Maybe it was because I played all these in order and was tired of World War II, because I was definitely getting fatigued and ready for something new by the end of this. This game is notorious for being the hardest Call of Duty campaign, and I definitely see why. I played all these games on regular mode, mainly just to get through them quickly and also for the enjoyment, but this one still felt like I was playing on hard mode and definitely made for some frustrating moments. This game's got some sick moments though. The first mission is sick as hell. Obviously sniping with Reznov was fun. The characters in this campaign were peak at the time. I'm a big Roebuck and Polanski fan. Reznov was sick as well, obviously. All in all, a pretty good campaign with some stiff competition ahead. At 14, I have Call of Duty 2, another classic with some new stuff brought to the table. This was actually my first time playing this game since I honestly didn't even know it was on the 360. This game is another World War II shooter, however, I think it does a lot more than what the previous games did, and provides a lot of variety while maintaining a grounded story. The atmosphere in this game is top tier for sure. I really love the desert mission with the British guys. The European missions are sick too, with the D-Day landing and the hill mission being my favorites. It's got a pretty solid story, just another Band of Brothers style stories with nothing too fancy being done here. The gameplay is probably the best of the old CODs, meaning like the first 3 CODs by far. It's really smooth in my opinion compared to the other two. And this game had some solid moments, like when that one soldier gets shot through the door. The characters were actually pretty sick. I really like the Americans in this one. Obviously Price was cool to see again, but Sergeant Randall was top tier in my opinion. I damn near almost completely forgot about the Russians, but they were cool too. But honestly, the first guy you meet definitely killed the vibe off the bat for me. Rounding out the OG of the OGs, I have Call of Duty 3. I know, another World War II shooter, but this one is definitely the best despite the problems that it has. This was the first campaign to really feel like a character-driven story compared to the other two. The atmosphere in this one is a little weaker than COD 2, but this one definitely is better in almost every other category. Like I said, this game was character-driven, and these characters were actually really entertaining and had at least some depth to them, like with Guzzo being probably the biggest change during all this. I love going back and forth to multiple factions, and it really helped the gameplay not feel bland. However, the biggest setback this game has is the fact that you get stuck on everything. I mean everything. You have to walk around the smallest things like helmets and rocks, and it makes the game feel really rugged, and it gets annoying after a while. This is definitely the second hardest campaign behind World at War for me. This game had some really good moments. With the Americans, you had Dixon go down and Guzzo change face at the end. All the Polish guys died, or pretty much all of them. The Canadians were fun to play with, and I like when they bullied their wimpy little guy in the squad. Overall, a fun experience and would be higher if the gameplay wasn't so bad. After that, I have Infinite Warfare. I've seen this one getting some love lately, and that's good to see. This game does have a few problems. The atmosphere is an easy high tier due to the environment that this game is played in, being space. All the different planets are sick, and there's not really a miss in the location category. The story is really well told and is for sure an underrated gem, but standalone, it just doesn't hold up against some of the others on the list. Not bad, just good instead of great. The gameplay is pretty solid, but with the side missions included, it gets repetitive really fast. The gameplay is pretty solid, but with the side missions included, it gets really repetitive really fast and isn't much of a challenge. This game has some great moments, with Reyes sacrificing himself and the attack on Earth being some of the most notable in my opinion. I know a lot of people love the characters and highlight the characters of this game, but for me, that's probably the worst part of this game, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, the main 3 protagonists are super good, but the antagonist is so baseline and boring for me, and I'm not invested into killing this guy at all. Not to mention all the side characters it's cool to see a lot of depth in the game, and I like that a lot, but they're honestly all just okay to me. Even with those few problems, I think this is an awesome campaign and definitely holds its own on the list. Coming in at 11, I have New Modern Warfare 2. This might be a little high on most people's list, but that's fine because I think the game is overhated anyway. This is a solid sequel to the first New Modern Warfare, and it has some pretty cool moments in it. The atmosphere of this game is the best in the New Modern Warfare trilogy, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of the Mexico missions. The night missions are always going to be peak to me, so it's an easy A tier for me. The story's decent, It has some cool ideas, but honestly, I'm not for the nostalgia. I wish Graves would have been more of a soul twist villain or even introduce somebody else. The gameplay is good, smooth, and overall enjoyable. Not really much to say about it. This game has some good moments and some bad ones alike. Like, why can't Graves just shoot Hassan when they capture him? I mean, it really doesn't make any sense that he can't shoot him. If he's a mercenary and his whole reason for being there is to cut around the red tape, why can't he just be the one to shoot him? It doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why did they go through all that work just to let him go with no info in the first place? The characters are not good in this game. Price and Gaz are probably the best two, but Soap is honestly horrible and Ghost is mid at best. Hassan is a F-tier villain in my opinion, and the only one worse is probably Richter. All in all, this game is pretty solid and worth another playthrough despite its problems in its story and some mid-level characters. Cracking the top 10, I have Call of Duty Ghosts, another COD cursed with the pre-release hate similar to Infinite Warfare. However, I think this game is actually a pretty good and entertaining campaign. I really like the concept of South America teaming up against the United States, but this game definitely has a few problems. The atmosphere is pretty good, but one thing I will say about it is it has some sort of weird fog over it. I'm not saying it's on purpose, but if it is, it's a bad call. I really like the locations in this game. I'm a big fan of the baseball stadium and the beach you defend early in the game. Plus the city you go to during Federation Day, that one's by far the best. The story is also really good in my opinion. I like the idea of two sons of a ghost getting recruited into the group just to immediately get into beef with the main antagonist, who definitely is one of the best in the series. The gameplay is also good here. I think this game has the best flight missions of any Call of Duty, and the stealth aspect of some of these missions is top tier. The mission where you sneak around the jungle is just a sick moment as well. Same with the one where you break into the enemy base and disguise yourself as the enemy. It's really fun. But honestly, the characters other than Rourke are really cut and dry. I'd say Hesh is by far the worst one. He's really corny. Maverick is mid. Keegan is kind of a great value ghost, but that doesn't mean he's bad. At the end of the day, this is a game that tried something new, and although initially failed, I think over time, it's become a classic among longtime COD players. At 9, I have New Modern Warfare. This game came out my senior year, so it was the last COD of my childhood, and honestly, I was surprised to see it this low, even with all the great games ahead. This has been their best reboot so far, despite the criticism early in the game's lifespan. This game has a really good atmosphere in my opinion. I really like the 13 Hours mission and the Clean House mission obviously being the most iconic. This game's story is also pretty solid. I like how the game flows back and forth from Gaz back to Alex, and the mission when you play as the kid Farah is actually pretty helpful in showing how evil the antagonist really is. The gameplay is good. I would say its only knock is lack of variety, but honestly, I'd rather have a constant, smooth gameplay rather than variety. This game has some good moments without the context of the other games. Alex's death was a cool moment. Farah getting her revenge felt right too. The Clean House mission on itself was a cool moment, as well as the plot twist with Farah's brother. I would say, yet again, the characters were the weakest part of this campaign. Alex was really cringy, and the antagonists, you know, they tried to do their best with them, but they just weren't good. And honestly, Price was not up to par in this new trilogy either. After that, I have Call of Duty World War II. This time, I think they did a lot better than previous attempts. This campaign is really solid and definitely deserves the top 10 in my opinion. I really like going through the campaign with one squad, and I think they picked a pretty good group of characters to go with it. I think we've finally reached a point where every game's atmosphere is just peak, and this game is no exception. Obviously, you have the Saving Private Ryan D-Day mission, also the Battle of the Bulge, and I think it's Hill 493 mission. This game has a really good story, and I like the idea of having the antagonist be more of an anti-hero type in Pearson. I also like the bond between the characters throughout the story. The gameplay is where this game has its biggest struggles, in my opinion. I don't know if it's just me or what, but this game feels really slow, and I'm not a big fan of stealth missions during the biggest war in the world's history. This game has some awesome moments sprinkled through it. I already mentioned the Normandy beach, but also when you're in the bell towers, and obviously the train part was sick. This game has a good set of characters, and none of them are really annoying or too corny in my opinion. I think if I would have ranked this back in the day, it would have been towards the end, but over time it's really proved itself to be a solid campaign. Up next at 7, I have another controversial pick with Advanced Warfare. This game has a star-studded cast, and you could tell that Sledgehammer was putting a lot of work into this game. I love the atmosphere. The Antarctica mission was sick. The first mission when you're in Korea is sick. Also the Seattle and Greek missions as well. This game is in the top 5 in story for a reason. I love the idea of a man gaining power and trying to take over the world, as well as the fact that you yourself at one point worked for him makes the twist even better. I really like the gameplay in this one. It's really smooth, and you never really have a tough time during this game. Not to say it's without its challenges, but it's definitely more of a relaxing playthrough. This game has some insane moments, obviously F for Respect being the most iconic, but Iron Speech was also really impactful in this game. I would say the worst part is once again the characters. Even though I like a lot of them, they just have some misses here and there, like Hades is not a very good antagonist, and just some mid spread throughout. This game is a classic to me, and by far some of the most fun I've had in one of these games. Just missing the top 5, I have what most people would put at their number 1, Modern Warfare. Hear me out, I know this game has a grip on older player nostalgia, and that's for a good reason, but out of all of the games I put ahead of it, it's just not as good. I love this game's atmosphere, and I think it's got some of the best music in the series. Everyone knows about the All Gillied Up mission, and the Middle East missions are also sick as well. This game has an awesome story, with half of it being about the SAS tracking down the number 1 terrorist in the world, and the other half being about the United States Marines doing the same thing. You could tell Infinity Ward was really in their bag in this one. This game has some of the best gameplay. I would say its only problem is the lack of variety, but like I said before, I prefer smoothness over variety. This game has some insane moments, with number 1 being about the nuke going off, but also the ending where you kill off Zakayev. Same with when you find Al-Assad in the sniping missions. These characters are iconic in the gaming community, and for a good reason. This is a perfect cast of characters for what they were going for. Considering what this game went on to help create, I can see why this is a lot of people's favorite COD campaign. Finally, here we are in the top 5, and I have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Now, don't get me wrong, I think if this game was any longer, it would have been at 6 behind Modern Warfare. This was my first time playing through this campaign. I was surprised at how good this game was. I was pretty skeptical about not having an actual main character, but it ended up working out in the end. This game has top tier atmosphere, especially for its timeline being in the 80s and all. This game's story is top tier as well, with all the twists and outcomes that it has. You could tell the writers were really passionate about this game given the circumstances it was made in. The gameplay is great, really smooth, and a good amount of variety. The moments in this game are great, with the twist about who your character is, as well as the final plot twist with Adler trying to kill you. Once again, I would say the characters make this game a little lower for me. Mason and Frank Woods should have been more involved in my opinion. Adler was a sick addition, but the rest of the group was pretty mid to me. This game deserves more love than it gets, and is by far the best this decade. Up next, probably the hottest take on this entire list, I have Modern Warfare 2. Yes, I am aware of the plot twist, and yes, I am aware of how good this game was at its peak. And while I really love this game, the campaign just isn't as good as the top 3. The atmosphere is top tier, having so many unique locations, and not to mention the music and the surrounding sounds of the battle. This game was when Infinity Ward truly figured out what the fans wanted. The story is iconic in its own right, with General Shepard being the twist villain. I would say this game's gameplay is its weakest aspect, honestly. It just doesn't keep me engaged. Luckily, the rest of the game's aspects carried all the weight. This game probably has the most popular moment in all time of COD. Combine that with how well the story is written, and it's bound to be full of great moments like Price's speech, or when America gets invaded and you have to take back DC. This game has some of the best characters in the entire series, which just elevate this game to a higher level than the other games. Literally and figuratively, a game-changing campaign that launched this franchise into a different tier. Cracking the top 3 by just 0.4, I have Black Ops 2. This game is what most consider the last game of true prime COD, and I don't blame them. There's nothing that comes after this game that tops it, in my opinion. one of the best games to handle an A and B story, as well as being the first COD to have multiple endings. The atmosphere in this game is really top tier. They really captured what it means to be in a futuristic Black Ops squad. Not to mention the music in this game is by far the best in the series. This game's story is sort of a sequel with flashbacks from Woods working seamlessly with the modern day with David Mason. The gameplay is top tier with how smooth it is, plus the insane amount of variety this game has to offer. I really don't think anything can top it. This game has some sick moments, especially with all the outcomes and choices you can make throughout the game. You can really tell the developers were all in with this one. This game has some of the best characters in the entire series, notably Frank Woods and Alex Mason. David Mason and Harper were also extremely good characters in my opinion. Combine that with probably the best villain and you have a high class of characters. Probably the most daring COD, and luckily for them, it worked out in their favor. Just missing the top spot, I have Modern Warfare 3. In my opinion, this is the most overhated game in the entire series, and definitely doesn't deserve any of the hate that it gets, especially this campaign. Obviously, this is the ending of an iconic trilogy, so people are going to have different opinions on how this should have ended. But me personally, I think this is the best ending I've seen in a trilogy in almost all of gaming. This game has a top tier atmosphere and I love every location this story has to offer. From New York to Europe or Africa, this game really encompasses what World War III would look like. Price and Soap's story ending is great, and I know people hated on Yuri at the start, but I don't see a problem with him. Obviously, you have an iconic villain in Makarov to push the war further on. The gameplay is great, very smooth with relatively no issues, but the moments in this game, in my opinion, top every other game in this series. Makarov's death, kidnapping the Russian president, the Americans sacrificing themselves to save the president, the building falling onto your unit when you're in Europe, the Eiffel Tower going down. Everything about this campaign is top tier and nothing to me will ever compare to the moments in this game. The characters are all good. I think it was more fatigue of seeing the same group over and over, but they mixed it up good enough for me. Before I played all these games, I predicted that this was going to be my number one, but I was shocked to see it just one more shy of an all-time great game ahead of this one. Finally, here we are. At number one, I have the only Call of Duty Black Ops. No explanation needed, an incredible story mixed with some of the most talented voice actors the franchise has ever seen. Combine that with a Cold War vibe, and you have one of the greatest games to ever exist. To me, Black Ops is a combination of what makes all these campaigns so good. You like World at War's over-the-top violence? It's got it. Modern Warfare 2's insane plot twists? It's got it. BO2 vibe and characters? Nothing beats the original. The atmosphere of this game is damn near perfect in my opinion. I always wanted a Vietnam COD, and this does it justice in my opinion. Not to mention some of the most iconic locations in the series, with like Rebirth Island, as well as some of the best music to match it. This story keeps your attention from start to finish, with a final mission that takes this story to a next level. The gameplay is incredible with all the different situations you're put in, and honestly has some of the best gunplay in any first-person shooter. This campaign is packed to the brim with moments from killing Fidel Castro, to breaking out of a Russian prison, to finding out you're mind controlled. It's got it all. The characters are also top tier. You got Mason, Woods, Hudson, Weaver, and Reznov. All high-end protagonists with some decent antagonists to match. All in all, this campaign changed the entire landscape of gaming, and it's going to go down in history as one of the most iconic games ever made. So there it is, my official ranking of every COD campaign ever. I know there's some that others would put higher, but I definitely think this is a solid list. I'd also like to note that there's definitely no nostalgia bias here. I've played all these games back to back to back, so they were all fresh in my mind when I made this list. Anyway, put your top 3 in the comments or let me know what you do differently. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.